Sometimes they need a little help.
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and unfortunately, this is something that you might have to experience if you breed ball pythons, especially, but also if you buy one that's a little bit small, right? So normally I would recommend you buy a ball python that is over 150 or 200 grams, right? But that really helps you because those first 200 grams or the 150 or whatever it is from hatchling to 200 grams, that animal is going to develop habits that will last for the majority of that animal's life, right? So after 200 grams, it's basically the husbandry when it comes to ball pythons that leads to their success in the future. This video will discuss what happens if you get an animal that's either hatched, that's below the 75 grams, that's the normal weight, or 60 grams, that's the normal weight, and it's not eating yet, or it's emaciated to the point to where you have to step in and help it, right? Okay, guys, before we start, I want to put a disclaimer out there. I do not recommend assist feeding or anything like that without professional veterinary experience for subadults and adult ball pythons. For one, by the time they get through juvenile, they're already over a year old, so they've been eating, right? So you might want to look at what type of animal you're feeding. So is it a mouse, a rat, or an African soft fur that this animal is more accustomed to feeding? And as a pet owner, as a breeder, etc., you would want to get that animal something that it prefers, right? So you don't try to feed something that it won't eat. It just doesn't happen, especially in things that can't talk, that aren't human, right? So the disclaimer is that I really don't recommend assist feeding adults and subadults because in the wild, they eat at most, like on average, about 7 to 12 times a year or about once a month. And if they go off feed, it's not a big deal, right? So a lot of the times it's us who gets impatient for our animals when they go off feed. But if we just relax and chill, I mean that, just chill. It might take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as long as they're hydrated and they're not dropping down in body weight, which means you have to weigh them every month, like when you're trying to feed them, and you're following some things that would be more productive to them getting back on feed, like maintaining husbandry, humidity, clean water, just pretty much still doing your job with the exception of them eating and doing their job. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. But of course, if they lose more than half their body weight, and you can tell that they're emaciated from, if you can see their skeleton, if you can see their ribs, now it's getting way past the point. But that's why I say as soon as you notice that they're going off of food or feed, about 2 weeks, weigh them. And that way you can actually track them and see what the progress of this is. Now, if it's just a couple of 100 grams from an 800 or 900 gram animal, then it's not a big deal. When they come back on, they should probably be fine. Again, in a video before this, and I'll put the link right here, I really discussed how you can know when your ball python is getting ready to become an adult. They do normally go off of feed when they get around 800 or 900 grams, sometimes 1,000 grams, but there's some sort of phase in there, for not all, but for most, that will go off of feed. So this video will cover for not those animals, but we're looking at juveniles and hatchlings, in particular hatchlings, because we're trying to develop them with the habits that will lead to their success in the future. When we discuss hatchlings, it's important for us to note the average sizes, right? So the average size of a hatchling that's born is from 60 to 100 grams. Now that's the average healthy hatchling. Now, of course, there can be some born larger than that, and there can be some born smaller than that, which I'll show in this video, because that's one of the reasons why I think we're having an issue, but I'm not sure. You know, you breed a male and a female, and you just never know what kind of kids you're gonna get. But in particularly, those hatchlings we're looking at from anywhere from 0 to 3 months, that's the hatchling phase, and from 3 months on to about 12 months or a year, that's the juvenile phase, at which the juveniles will go from anywhere in, on average, 200 to 700 grams. Right? I know that's a 500 gram swing, but again, it's not imperative for these animals to eat every time we offer them food. If we look at that hatchling again from 60 to 100 grams at birth, and the juvenile from 200 to 700 grams from 3 months to 7 months. That's our baseline that we're talking about. One thing that's important to note is what's happening with these animals so you can get a feel of what's at risk if your animal fails to hit their benchmarks on growth. So as a normal hatchling is born into this world, 60 to 100 grams, they start eating, right? So they eat one meal that's generally small and live, right? So most people start them off on a live prey item, then they either switch them to a frozen thawed or to a live rat pup, right? Or a mouse, whichever one, but it's an adult size that we're looking at, right? Not for the rat pup, of course, only for the mouse, all right? So we know what I'm talking about. Well, they, at that time, as they eat and they become a juvenile from 0 to 1 year, that's important just as it is for any other species of animal, right? So they're developing protein for their muscles. Their digestive systems are getting more active because, as you know, the ball pythons, when they're babies, they poop a lot. They eat one time and they might poop like 4 times. Well, it takes a while for those enzymes and the bacteria in their stomach to actually develop to where it's just not so traumatic for them at that point either. Well, at the same time, as they eat continually, they're developing increased fat stores, which means our nerves are fat, they're surrounded in a fat sheath. So the more they eat, the better their whole body gets, all right? And then their heart function improves, their lung function improves. I already said their digestive system, their skin improves, their bone structure actually gets to where it's improving. It's not as soft. I mean, there's a lot of things that are at risk. So when we think about assist feeding, the number one thing we should always be thinking about, it's a last resort effort. Now, I would say the one thing that I don't want you to get this confused with is force feeding. So force feeding, I would highly recommend no one do that unless you really know the anatomy and you've seen it done and you've been trained on how to do it from a professional. Because if you push that animal down too far and past the stomach or past the heart and you apply too much force, you could actually kill your animal from force feeding and then pushing that prey item down too far past the stomach, right? So I would really recommend that you, at the very, very utmost situation of severity, that you only assist feed the animals. And assist feeding really isn't harmful. You're just trying to do it until the animal gets the hang of it. You know what I mean? So without anything else, guys, we're going to get right into it. Okay, so starting out, I got 2 mouse fuzzies here just in case the snake's teeth rupture one. I have another one. I don't want to feed one with its guts hanging out. It's just a smart thing to do. Then I will be assist feeding this pastel gravel head clown. Like you see, it's really pretty, the blushing on the side. I mean, I just really want this animal to pull through and start eating on its own. This is the second time that I will be assist feeding it. I waited for a couple of weeks before getting started, but the number one thing I do is I line up the neck and my fingers right there just to make sure that I'm protecting the heart and the lungs, because those are up near the top of the snake. And I want to be careful about gripping the snake around the neck in case it starts twisting, because normally they will, just so that I have a firm grip so that they're not twisting through that part. I don't want them to get any internal damage. And it's also important to grab the snake directly behind the head like so, just so that you make sure that you have a firm grip, because it will try to get out of it. And now I'm bringing in a wet mouse fuzzy. I'm gonna place it inside of the snake's mouth. Normally you can use the snout of the rat to open up the snake's mouth. And what I found that works more successfully is turning the animal upside down and working just the head into the throat. So that's one of the things. And then you want to go above the glottis, or where the tongue comes out. And once it gets back there, the jaws of the rodent should be secured inside of the snake's mouth, and you just let it go. That's one of the things that I found with an earlier assist feeding from a couple of years back, is if you use too large of a prey item, then you're kind of having to force that animal down the throat, and that's not good for the snake, you know what I'm saying, because most of the time the rodent's already dead. I sped this video up as you saw the video just so that it can go through. But that's pretty much it, guys. With a little bit of luck, this animal named Mars will start eating on his own. But again, just be gentle, be calm, be patient. If there's no structural damage to the animal, then you can work on assist feeding, but if there is, then you might have to seek out professional advice from a vet, and might have to take some other measures with the animal. But without anything else, guys, this is what we got right here, and the videos are here on the link. So if you want to see more, just tune in, give me a like and subscribe. Thanks.